Well, the first thing I want to say to you tonight is that I don't preach very long. That should make you happy. If not, I am sincere about saying that, so don't you think I'm lying to you. It's a blessing to be here, be with the church family. And I know you're kind of sizing me up a little bit. And as you're looking at me, I'm looking at you. And we'll get along just fine for a few minutes tonight. And again, I'm not planning on being exceptionally long tonight. I know you've had a busy weekend. Many of you have worked behind the scenes, and thank you for doing that. Take your Bible tonight and go to 1 Chronicles, please. 1 Chronicles chapter 13. 1 Chronicles 13. And again, let me say to you, I have had some issues with my brain, so I stutter a little bit. And I don't necessarily worry about that because some things you just can't help. And once it comes upon you, you just have to get used to it, not worry about it, and everything is just fine. Again, the nice part about that is I'm already halfway through the message. So I hope you're taking notes. 1 Chronicles chapter 13. And by the way, I have to once in a while ask you if I have the right verse or I have the right things, because one of the things that does happen after you've had some problems with your brain, which I have, I know you have problems with your brain too, but mine is diagnosed, which means that they know what's bothering you. Well, the problem is you don't know what's bothering you, and everything's fine that way. Look at verse 30. Verse 38. It says, all these men of war. Do I have the right verse? Chapter 12. Thank you. That's why I ask everybody to turn to somewhere, because if I get lost, I'll just stay where we're at, and then I'll just start speaking and I'll make it all up. So 1 Chronicles 13 verse 38. Do I have that right? Oh, verse 12. Okay, chapter 12. Okay. See, that is great, because now I have your attention, because confusion is wonderful. So chapter 12, there it is, verse 38. All these men of war that could keep rank, they came with a perfect heart to Hebron, or some pronounce it Hebron, but Hebron, to make David king over all Israel. And all the rest of Israel were of one heart to make David king. I want you to see this again. All these men of war could keep rank. Mine has a military background, being in the Marine Corps and being in Special Forces and everything, and keeping rank, in my mind, is extremely important, even in a church. In a church, it means that we can get along, that we can understand what the mission is. And then once we understand what the mission is, we could keep rank to come with a heart that allows us to get the job done. And the job that needs to get done is in church. And like tonight, we'll take a few minutes tonight to talk about the ministry. And I want you to see, while you're right there, look at verse 33. Verse 33. And again, I want to make sure I have the right one. Verse 33, of Zebulun, such as went forth to battle. Do I have the right one? Yes. Thank you. Expert in war, all instruments of war, 50,000, which could keep rank. They were not of double heart. Could you try to understand 50,000 that could march in order to accomplish, and that they could keep rank? Rank in the military is something where I was on a drill team for 4 years. And what we learned of so many different things was rank and file, which meant that we could march in line, march in step, and we could keep in rank to where we were one unit. And I want to tell you something. When a church gets to the place where they could keep rank, you can accomplish so much. When you're going the same direction, where you having the same mindset, to where you're not just talking about things that don't matter, causing confusion. Because a lot of the stuff that's being talked about just really doesn't matter. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has their own critique. And I want to tell you, a lot of times when you're working in a military unit, you just want to lay that stuff aside. And I'm talking about the things that don't matter. So you can focus on marching. So you can focus on the main topic, the main thing. And militarily, when you go to war, and the bullets start flying, and they're shooting at you. I remember one situation where they were shooting at us, and they were not very good shots, which, by the way, is a good thing. When they're shooting at you and the bullets are flying, and you know they haven't done it very well in their practicing, it's good to have some of them that you just think, well, they don't know what they're doing, and you're thinking, what a nice opportunity. Because we were being commanded And the radios were giving instructions to us, and we were lying low. And the bullets were flying past us. And you can tell when they're not very organized. And we just laid low until our commanders told us to open up. And we took the situation in hand very quickly. And the enemy broke ranks. You say, what is breaking rank? When you're focused and the enemy's bullets are flying over the top of you and they weren't hitting. And then our unit is allowed to respond. And it does something for your morale. And I understand we're in church. But it's important in church to keep rank. What does that mean? It's important in church to work as one unit, to work with one purpose, to accomplish what the Lord would have us to accomplish. And I'm not saying that we're killing people, but an illustration. As I think back, when it's real, I'm stopping for a moment to think. Because when a church can keep rank, you can accomplish some very important things. I was in a situation years ago. We had just parachuted out, and we were in the first part of a parachute jump, and a lot of them, it's their first time to jump out of the airplane. And you say, what's the big deal? Well, it depends on where you're at. The big deal is you want to make sure everything's in order. And so we had trained for a couple of weeks, and then we're getting ready to make the first jump of this is a new unit, new personnel. And as you're getting ready and they say, stand in the door. You say, where's the door? It's going to be where you're going out of. And it was not a night jump, it was a daytime jump. And so we were all lined up and excited. Please listen, it's not the first jump that gets you. The first jump is easy. What's the problem? Well, it's the second jump where you don't know exactly what just happened. You say, are you being funny? No, I'm being serious. The first jump, you just stand there, and after you jump, you kind of look at each other and say, hey, that was great. Let's go do it again. And then the second jump, you look out there and all these bodies are somewhat twisted up because they forgot what they learned. And then you go to the third jump and the fourth jump, and now we're jumping at night. And that nighttime air hits you. And then we're learning, if you would, now we're in recon. And now we're jumping now in the middle of the night. And there's just 7 of us in what's called, it's called a stick. And we're 7 of us in a stick, meaning one after another. And the air hits you and you're 6,000, 7,000 feet up. And now you're not talking. You're focusing in on all your training. And all that you do is you can't necessarily see the other 7 people behind you. And it's just one after another. And what you focus in on is the glow stick. And the glow stick is just something that's on the back of the helmet. And you want to make sure that that glow stick is where it's supposed to be. And then that you're where their next guy is supposed to be, and the next guy, and the next guy. Because that's what you're focusing in on. And by the way, even thinking about this now, I say, man, was that exciting. I know I can't do it anymore, now being older, but I can still think about it because the adrenaline rush. You say, man, you're a little wacky. Well, you have to be a little wacky to jump out of an airplane in the middle of the night with weapons and the ammunition and everything you're supposed to do. And you're hoping that everything works out well, that you've been trained to do. And you're again following that guy in front of you, and there's only 7 of you out there. It's a reconnaissance team. And then you see the guy in front of you start to spiral down. And you're heading for your DZ, your drop zone, and you're spiraling down with 6 or 7 guys, and you know in formation, we're going to drop probably 6,000 feet spiraling down. So we hit the LZ, the landing zone, and we want to hit very close to each other when we hit the ground. So you can get your weapons adjusted because they might be shooting at you. Doesn't this sound exciting? You say, what's this all about? Well, it's church. You say, what kind of church is this? It's an illustration. Because when you go through these things, the Lord teaches you some things. What are you being taught in this illustration? Obedience. What are you being obedient to? The guy that's just in front of you because you're watching him staying in line and getting ready to hit the ground in what's called a PLF, a parachute landing formation. And if all goes well, you don't break your legs or anything. You don't break your back. You get your weapons up, and then you bunch together and make sure everything's intact, because now we're going to connect. And your training takes over, and you're not thinking about all this. You're just doing what you were trained to do over and over and over again. Listen to me, because that's what training is about. Over and over and over again. Committing to the mission. Is this making sense to you? I don't know if it is, because you say, well, that's just men talking. It's ladies too. What do you mean? The ladies can be, their heart can be totally attached to what they're doing. And when you're in formation, my wife is here, and I want you to know I'm glad so much that I have a wife, and my wife knows how to be involved in formation. She takes care of so many things in my life that has allowed Patty and I to move forward to do God's will. I'll stop again to say, are you understanding what I'm saying? I mean that. I'm not just trying to make a bunch of words. I'm trying to make sure your heart connects to what I'm saying. Because even though we're in church right now, you have to be in formation. Well, what kind of formation are you talking about? Staying steady, not gossiping a lot, not making up stories that keep us off track. You see, my mind is somewhat militaristic, and you say, that doesn't sound pleasant. Do you want to accomplish the mission or not? I still want to accomplish the mission. Right, Patty? God's put us still on track to do what God wants us to do. And even though I limp along a little bit, I'm glad I have a wife that is willing to jump with me. You say, what is she doing? Well, my wife now leads. What do you mean she leads? Well, I can't lead like I used to. Why? Because I have mental challenges. Could you notice? And things come along that you didn't plan, but God planned. So God put Patty and I together, and Patty is still willing to jump. Let's go. Just 2 nights ago, we came here and we were getting ready to go on this excursion, and I apologize for my mind doesn't quite work perfectly all the time, but just let some of the things go that I couldn't quite communicate with. But we were heading on the airplane to this church, and my wife was leading because now I have to follow. Oh, aren't you the head of the household? Yes. But I told my wife, do everything we're supposed to do, please. Because my mind can't quite make those decisions, but she can make those decisions. So I listened, and we came to the banquet. What a great banquet this was. The meals, the food, the organization, everything. You did very, very well. And it's okay for me to say amen. And you should say amen too. Well, I saw this and that, and I don't know if I would have done this or that. Would you just please be quiet? And let them see that everything was in order and the job was done well. Is that okay to say? Well, I've said it now. And I believe it. And then this morning at church, as far as I know, it went well. Church, the music, the organization, the fellowship, everything as far as I know went well. And then tonight, we get to come back together again. And please listen, I hope you don't have anything negative to say. Don't say it around me, brother. I'm serious. I don't want to hear it. If you're a negative person, would you please shut up? Is that okay? Do you use those terms? Well, I don't think it's right to say shut up. Okay, be quiet, please. Please. And so we were in the night coming to our objective, and we hit well the landing zone, and no problems thus far. And we all got right where we were supposed to be and got organized. Just 7 of us. No talking. Literally no talking. The radios weren't on yet. And we were just observing everything. And everybody was where they were supposed to be. And we started on the mission. You say, what do you mean no talking? We had all been briefed on what we were supposed to do once we hit the landing zone, the LZ. And all we were doing was clicking each other. What do you mean? With radio clicks. What was that? Just clicking, communicating, saying, yeah, we're okay. It was just a click. And everybody got into formation. We started off Why were you just clicking? Because we didn't know where the enemy was. And the problem is, they were trying to find us, and we were trying to find them. And it wasn't going to be a friendly meeting. And we wanted to get the upper hand, because the element of surprise is very, very important. Are you following along? Would you go back where we were just at in verse 33, please? Verse 33, of Zebulun. Do you have the right? Of Zebulun, such as went forth to battle. You were just not out there on a picnic. You were going forth to battle. They were using weapons and they were out to kill you. Expert in war. All instruments of war. Boy, this one always gets me. 50,000. Look what they could do. They could keep rank. 50,000. Which could keep rank, which means keeping rank. They could stay in formation. Stay where they're called to do. Look at what they were training to do. Marching and keeping rank. So the enemy would somewhat shake in their boots. They were not of double heart. I'll say it again. They were not of double heart. I want to say this, and please listen. A church needs to be in rank. A church needs to not be of hearts that are well, I'll put this. You've got to trust each other. You have to trust each other. And it takes a while to learn to trust each other. My wife and I trust each other. She now has to be leading. I'm supposed to be the leader, but she now has to lead. Well, why can't you lead? My mind doesn't work sometimes. But we want to get to church and do what we're supposed to be doing here. We were on another mission where we were in the water, under the water, scuba. And we had already had our insertion and we were swimming, only about 30 to 40 feet underwater. Scuba gear, all of that, and we were past the first portion of our training. And you all swim with a buddy, meaning it's buddy to buddy. And you never get away from your buddy because that's just part of the training. And so we were just, I don't know, again, just about 30 feet underwater. And you know, the bubbles and everything. And we were coming towards the objective. And underwater, you still have to be in control. You have to be disciplined. And you're watching the bubbles, if you would, going beside your mask. And you got scuba tanks on, your aluminum tanks, and you got your fins on and everything, and we're heading towards the objective silently, obviously underwater. And you have this little way of navigating, and you have your hand, your fist out that way, and the guy who's leading just has his fist out, and he's watching the compass, the glow of the compass underneath the water. And you're trusting him that he's heading the right direction. Well, what are you doing? I've got my head down and I'm watching the navigation of that compass. So we're going directly where we're supposed to go. And his job is protecting. My job is guiding. You can't guide and direct sometimes all at once. And so now you could sense the atmosphere and the pressure of whether you're going up or down. The pressure on your ears helps you to keep the right. And it's going to be a long night swim, and we had to have discipline on our air tanks. What does that mean? Well, you can't just suck too much air. You have to be air conservative and be disciplined and relax and just swim silently. I'm sorry that I'm just reliving some of that, because you have to be steady. And the training is really necessary because of the danger that's involved. And you can really mess yourself up physically. But it's okay. We're halfway through I'll just use this word, we're halfway through the stalking part. Well, what do you mean? Well, you're stalking quietly underwater. And you still right next to your buddy, because you have to trust each other. And there's a team of 7 of you, but we're swimming along. And now I have to remind myself, Doug, don't suck air. Be disciplined. You're on a mission. Be disciplined. And that's what comes into your mind. Keep steady. Be disciplined. I'll say it again. Be disciplined. Because a lot of what church work is be disciplined. What do you mean? You make it sound like it's duty. Well, it is duty. Well, can't you have a good time? Yes. I have a great time. But you better stay disciplined. And so we're underwater and swimming along. And now we're 3/4 the way through the mission, but now it's going to change a little bit because we're coming up towards the objective. But we still have to keep rank. You're underwater, yeah, but you still have to keep rank. Well, wait a minute, you parachuted. Yeah, you still have to keep rank. Well, how long do you keep rank? Throughout the whole mission. Which could keep rank. They were not of double heart. Means their heart doesn't go wayward one way or another. I'll say it again. The heart just could not wander around and do what they're trying to accomplish, but they couldn't keep their minds steady. How many? 50,000. That still is amazing to me. They were expert in war. They trained. But I'll tell you, their warfare they were fighting was swords. And when you fight face to face, it's different. When you can see the person, it's different. When you can look into their eyes, it's different. But you still have to keep rank because the Bible says you couldn't be of a double heart. You couldn't let your heart wander. May I encourage you. You say, well, I'm not in the military. Yeah, but are you trying to be steady in what you're supposed to be doing, please? You say, all you're doing is sounding militaristic. Well, you can have a good time. Didn't you have a good time at the banquet? Talk to me. Didn't you have a good time? But didn't you have duties? Didn't you have duties? Didn't you know the organization had to do their best and keep rank? That's what makes an event go forward. And it looks like to me you guys were organized. The food was excellent. And all the things. How do you know that? I looked over at my wife and she was enjoying it. And when my wife is happy, I'm very happy. I didn't eat that night because I was focused on 15 minutes of speaking. That's all I was supposed to do that Friday night, was speak for 15 minutes. Why that? That was my assignment. Who assigned you to do that? Him. He's the pastor. And all I was supposed to do was my part. And when I was finished, I slipped down and turned my part over to his important part of the night. Are you listening, please? Your children are learning because they're watching us. I appreciate so much you young men and women. I mean that. The young men and women are here tonight. I don't know your ages, but as far as I'm concerned, you're already young men and women getting ready for the opportunities that you have for the Lord. And I hope it's okay for me to say that. If not, I'll see you on the drill field. I'm just trying to be a little funny, but that's all the funny I have in me, which is not much. All of these men of wars that could keep rank were of perfect heart. Where were they going? They were going with one heart to make David king. Why were they they were going to make David king? Because that was the Lord's plan. And we do what the Lord has planned. Oh, I already did the marching to the objective. I'd already trained on the mortars that I was supposed to make sure it hit on target. I was already wound up with all the different things that I was to do, and now I had the opportunity with my team. Even though I was not in charge of that team, I had already transferred the authority of that team to one of my men. But I was along with the team just to observe. And then I had another team that I was supposed to come along and observe the second team and that mission. And I want you to know something. I was very happy with their performance. They accomplished the objective. And my commanding officer was very pleased, because there's people that are under you, that are telling you what to do, and there are people over you, and they are telling you what to do, and you just do your part. And I mean that sincerely. I'm now 35 years into this particular ministry, and I'm glad that Patty and I have our particular part. Then the Lord decided to give Patty and I some unique circumstances, and we had, Patty, what did we have? We had a heart attack or something, seizures or something. And that's why I shake a lot. But listen, I still get to participate. And I don't want to withdraw from the battle even though we're wounded a little bit. We still have stuff to do. And I know we have stuff that's not as prominent and we're not as important, but we still get to participate. And I shake a little bit now, but that's okay. What are you doing? I mean that. What are you doing with your life? Whatever you're supposed to be doing, whether it's a job and you don't think your job is important, whatever the Lord has given you to do is important. You have to look at it as being important, because while you're on this earth, it's important you still get to breathe. I still get to breathe. I already had the opportunity to die twice. Then they revived me and I thought, well, there must be something more to do. I woke up evidently and my wife said, well, Patty, I'm a little bit shaky and it hurt a little bit. And my wife said, yeah, you were out for a few days. And I said to Patty, what was I doing? And she said, well, you were doing okay. And I said, well, that's good. But I got to tell you, it's hard to do a lot when you got all these tubes running in and out of your body and they're hurting you. And I'm saying, do you have any more drugs that will help me, please? When they say, well, we've given you what we can right now. And I said, well, I'll take a little bit more, please. And they said, not yet. And I said, okay. I don't want to become a dependency on drugs. But that's why tonight I stutter a little bit when I can't do much more because of fatigue. I still want to try to give it our all. And I hope you're willing to give it the Lord our all. And I mean that. I hope me standing up here and my wife with you and me shaking a little bit. Well, I've had some seizures and some different things, but Patty and I are still in the battle. And I mean that sincerely. We're not anybody. We're just trying to be servants. But somehow, I hope the Lord will use this little time that we have tonight, and it will be somewhat memorable, so you can go on and become what you're supposed to become and do what you're supposed to be doing now and upcoming. I've met a couple of you all, and you have wonderful plans coming up. Plot your plans and keep going and accomplish. I'm not allowed to say that Patty just had a birthday, so I didn't say that. But I also just had a birthday, and I can tell you that I turned 70. I can't tell you my wife's age, but I just turned 70. And I just evidently died a couple of times, but we're willing to go now and ready to go. I'm looking forward to 75 and 80. And I appreciate many that are much older and much wiser than me. I just want to do my little part, standing watch and doing what we're supposed to do. Isn't it good to have a perfect Bible? Thank you for allowing Patty and I to come. And I always wish that I would have done a little bit better in my little time. But I hope the Lord has given you something to think about, and that you'll remember the guy just standing up and shaking a little bit. But I'm still wanting to go on. How about you? Let's keep going, brother and sister. I know my hand's been shaking, but it's okay. The more I think, the more it